"You're not my real father. You never were." Those words didn't just cut through the room, they cut through my soul. My own daughter, the child I raised, looked me in the eyes with a hatred I'd never seen before, and in that instant everything I thought I knew about love, family, and truth was shattered. Welcome to Betrayal, to Justice, the place where family secrets are exposed, lies are shattered, and every betrayal is met with the justice it deserves. Today's story is one of heartbreak and revelation. A father who gave everything to raise his daughter, only to hear her whisper the cruelest words a parent could face. But what happens when betrayal meets the undeniable power of truth? Stay with me, this is a story you'll never forget. What she didn't know was that behind my silence, behind the pain on my face, there was a truth I had carried for years, a truth that would not only change how she saw me, but how she saw her mother and herself. Emma was always my little girl. I was there when she took her first steps, when she lost her first tooth, and when she cried the night before her first big exam. Every memory, every photo, every laugh, it was all ours, or so I believed. But lately she had been growing distant. She stopped calling me Dad and started calling me John, just John. At first I brushed it off as teenage rebellion. Kids go through phases, right, but then came the way she looked at me as though I was a stranger in my own home. That Sunday afternoon I asked her a simple question: "Why don't you come for dinner anymore, Emma? I miss us." Her response wasn't anger, it wasn't frustration. It was a cold, calculated strike meant to wound. "Because you're not my real father." Mom told me. You never were. I felt the air leave my lungs. I wanted to argue, to scream, to tell her she was wrong. But the way she stared at me with certainty, with resentment, told me she believed it. She believed her mother's lies. I walked away that day without a word, because if Emma wanted the truth, then one day she would hear it, and when she did, it would change everything. The house felt different after she said it, quieter, as if even the walls were holding their breath. I washed the coffee mug she hadn't touched and set it upside down on the rack like a small, white gravestone. Grief has a sound, you know. It's the dull thud of your heartbeat when a room goes still. It's the hum of the refrigerator, suddenly too loud because no one is talking anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there staring at the line of light under my bedroom door, counting the seconds between passing cars, replaying her voice in my head. "You're not my real father." It wasn't just a sentence. It was a verdict. The mind does cruel arithmetic in the dark, tallying up every memory and asking whether it ever mattered. By morning, my phone had 3 messages. My sister, Anne, "You okay?" "Call me." My brother, Tom, "Heard something from Lisa." "Ignore it." And one from a number I didn't recognize that only said, "We should talk." I ignored them all and went to work. I tried to hide in busyness, emails, invoices, a meeting about next quarter. I nodded when people spoke and laughed in the right places, but inside I felt like I was walking on a floor that might give way at any step. When a colleague asked, "Rough night?" I almost said my daughter erased me. Instead I said, "Didn't sleep much," and kept walking. That evening I sat at the dining room table with the family photo albums. I hadn't opened them in years. Life had migrated to phones and clouds, to digital frames and drives with names like Emma 5th Birthday Final 2. But these books, thick with plastic sleeves that stuck in humid weather, didn't lie. There she was, ping, cheeked and furious at a birthday candle that wouldn't blow out. There she was, asleep in my arms at the hospital, while a nurse smiled in the background. There she was, front teeth missing, holding a construction paper crown that read Dad's hero. If the past had a scent, it was Elmer's glue and the faint soap of baby shampoo. I traced a finger over one photo, Emma on my shoulders at the county fair, her hands in my hair like reins, both of us laughing into the sun, and I felt something hot press behind my eyes. I whispered I was there, like a man trying to convince the ocean not to be water. On the third night my sister came over uninvited. She brought lemon bars and the look of someone who refuses to watch another person drown from the shore. She said it, didn't she? Anne asked softly, setting the tin on the counter. I nodded with her whole heart. She got that from Lisa, she said, no malice in her tone, just the simple weight of a fact laid on the table. Lisa's been rewriting history for years because it makes the mirror easier to look at. I didn't tell Emma the ugly parts, I said. I never wanted her to hold my anger. I thought protecting her meant keeping quiet. Anne tilted her head. Maybe silence protects the wrong people. I breathed out, slow. If I tell her everything, I lose the last good part of what she thinks she had. She already lost it. Anne said, "The difference is, you can give it back with the truth." After she left, I stood in the doorway of Emma's old room. The walls were the same pale lavender we painted when she turned 13 and declared she was past pink. The shelves held a museum of small lives, softball trophies tilted like curious birds, a cracked snow globe from a school trip, a photo strip of us making faces in a booth. Dust had softened the edges of everything. I sat on the bed and listened to the house breathe. The next day the unknown number messaged again, "John, it's Mark. I think we should talk, man to man." My hand tightened around the phone. Mark, my ex-wife's husband, the man Emma compared me to with a casual cruelty that made me a stranger in my own story. Man to man. As if we were equals in this. As if he could stand in the place where I stood when a newborn wrapped her fist around my finger and refused to let go. I typed 3 words. About what, Mark? He replied quickly. About what Lisa told Emma. It's not exactly accurate. I stared at those words until they blurred. Not exactly accurate. I imagined him in his neat kitchen with stainless steel appliances, looking noble in the reflection while he rehearsed sentences that felt like charity. I didn't answer. Instead, I called my doctor's office to request a copy of the hospital records, the discharge papers, the forms with signatures and dates. I called the old family attorney and asked if he still had our custody agreements in storage. "I keep everything," he said, "even the things people wish I'd throw away." He promised to dig. That night dreams came. In one, I was at a wedding I didn't recognize. Guests whispered behind their hands as Emma stood at the altar. When the officiant asked, "Who gives this woman?" I stepped forward, but the aisle stretched longer and longer until it became a road. My feet were rooted to the ground, and when I tried to speak, no sound came out. Mark placed Emma's hand in Lisa's and smiled into the camera. I woke with my heart hammering, the room drenched in moonlight. I went for a drive before dawn. The city looks honest at that hour. No makeup on, no performance, just a few tired lights and the slow, patient sweep of street cleaners. I parked outside the little diner where Emma and I used to split pancakes when money was tight and joy was not. Gus, the owner, recognized me and slid a coffee across the counter without asking. "Haven't seen you with the kid lately," he said, like a man pushing a needle gently toward a splinter. "She's grown," I said. "Kids grow." He nodded, "but they don't outgrow the truth." I sipped the coffee and studied the chip open sign with a heartbeat drawn in the O. Some things keep giving you their small courage if you sit near them long enough. By the end of the week, the envelope from the attorney arrived. Thick, heavy, stamped with a date that felt like a lifetime ago. Custody schedules, affidavits, mediators' notes scribbled in the margins, and tucked behind it, a copy of a letter Lisa wrote when Emma was 5. "John is a stable, devoted father. Emma thrives in his care." My throat tightened. It was like finding a map to a city someone swore never existed. An hour later, the clinic returned my call. We located the archived records. The nurse said, "Birth certificate registration, neonatal notes, parental signature." "You're listed," her voice softened. Do you want a certified copy?" "Yes," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Yes, I do." I laid everything out on the dining table, the photos, the custody letter, the hospital forms. It looked like the kind of evidence you gather not for court, but for a heart that no longer knows what to believe. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. The truth was not a sword, it was a lantern, heavy to carry, necessary to see. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole I saw him, Mark, standing on my porch with his hands in his pockets, his eyes restless. For a long second I considered not answering, but I opened the door. "John," he said with a quick, awkward smile, "thanks for seeing me." "I didn't," I said. "You came anyway." He nodded, accepting the rebuke. "May I?" he asked, glancing past me toward the table behind. I stepped aside. He took in the spread of documents with a careful look, the kind people use when they're trying not to step on broken glass. "You've been thorough." "I've been a father," I said. He winced almost imperceptibly and took a breath. "Lisa told Emma that you weren't her biological dad," he said. "She told her I was. That's not true." He lifted his eyes to mine. I tried to get her to correct it. She wouldn't. The room tilted just slightly. Why would she do that? I asked, though a part of me already knew. "Control," he said. "Anger, shame, I don't know. Pick a poison." He paused. "Emma idolizes me because I'm new. Shiny. I haven't failed yet. Lisa liked that story. It made her look chosen." I swallowed. "So why are you here?" "Because I'm not interested in being worshipped for a lie," he said, and for the first time since I met him, I believed something about him, and because Emma asked me last night if I would walk her down the aisle someday. He looked at the photo on the table, me with baby Emma under the fluorescent glow of a hospital room. "I don't want to take a place that isn't mine." The clock on the wall ticked. Somewhere in the house the heater clicked on with a low sigh. I wanted to hate him, and maybe I still did, but what he'd brought was not an apology, it was an opportunity. "Then help me fix it," I said. "Not for me, for her." He nodded. "I'll talk to Lisa. I'll tell Emma what I know." But he hesitated, weighing something. "John, she loves you. She's just standing on a bridge someone told her to burn. Then we rebuild it," I said quietly, plank by plank. As I walked him to the door, my phone buzzed. A message from Emma lit the screen. "I need to see you tonight." My hands trembled, not with fear this time, but with the ache that comes before a storm breaks. I looked at the table, the letters, the photos, the proof, and felt the house gather itself like a body before a long run. I typed back, "I'll be here." I set the phone down, and in the sudden hush of the room another text blinked in. This one from a number I hadn't seen in years. My breath stalled when I read the name, and the 7 words that followed turned the floor to ice beneath my feet. "John, it's me. We need to talk?" Now, after Emma's words, the silence in my house was louder than thunder. I would walk from room to room and still hear it, the silence of a daughter who no longer called me Dad. At work I wore the mask well. I smiled in meetings, shook hands, answered calls. But the truth, inside, I was hollow. Every laugh sounded false. Every friendly gesture bounced off the armor I had built overnight. People noticed. My coworker asked, "Rough week?" I almost said the truth. My daughter erased me with a single sentence. Instead, I said, "Didn't sleep much." At night, sleep was no refuge either. I lay awake replaying her voice. "You're not my real father." The words didn't just hurt, they accused. They stripped me of every bedtime story. Every scraped knee I patched, every graduation photo where I clapped the loudest. And I began to wonder, was I really so easy to replace? I learned soon after that Lisa, my ex-wife, was the source of this poison. She had told Emma her version of the truth, a half-truth carefully sharpened to wound me. Smilliance Vibs Chat 23/09/2025-9 27 p.m. It made sense. Lisa had always known how to twist a knife without leaving fingerprints. When she remarried Mark, I told myself not to stand in the way. I stayed quiet. I didn't poison Emma against her mother. I didn't mention the affairs, the lies. The way Lisa left when Emma was barely 10. But Lisa, she didn't give me the same mercy. She whispered in Emma's ear, "John isn't your real father. Mark is more of a father than he ever was." And Emma believed her. 3 days later, my sister Anne stopped by. She set a box of lemon bars on my counter like she always did when she saw me hurting. She said it, didn't she? Anne asked softly. I nodded. She looked me in the eye and said I was never her real father. Anne's face hardened. Lisa's been rewriting history for years. You stayed quiet to protect Emma. But silence protects the wrong people. Her words hit me like a hammer. I had been holding back the truth for 20 years. Maybe I thought I was shielding Emma from the ugliness. Maybe I thought love was enough. But now, that silence had turned into a weapon Lisa used against me. That night, I pulled out the old family albums. Dust clung to the covers, the plastic sleeves stuck together from age. But as I flipped through, memories rose like ghosts. Emma in a tutu at her dance recital, smiling nervously as I clapped. Emma on my shoulders at the county fair, her little hands tangled in my hair. Emma asleep against my chest, no bigger than a loaf of bread. I whispered to the empty room, I was there, Emma. I was always there, but words whispered in an empty room weren't enough any more. I realized then, if Emma wanted proof, I had it. I had hospital records. I had custody letters. I had the one thing Lisa didn't, the truth. And then my phone buzzed. It wasn't Emma. It wasn't Anne. It was. Number I didn't recognize. The message read, "John, it's Mark. I think we should talk man to man." I stared at the screen, my pulse racing. Mark, the man Emma compared me to, the man Lisa held up as the real father. What could he possibly want, and why now? I typed back one word, why? His reply came instantly, because what Lisa told Emma isn't exactly true. I froze, the air left my lungs, my chest tightened. If Mark of all people was reaching out, then the story Lisa had told Emma might not just be cruel. It might be a lie, and if that was the case, then Emma's world was about to collapse. The message from Mark sat on my phone like a lit fuse. What Lisa told Emma isn't exactly true. For hours I stared at those words. Every muscle in my body begged me to ignore them, to throw the phone into a drawer and never look back. But something deeper, heavier, whispered, "This is the moment you've been waiting for." When Mark asked if we could meet man to man, I almost laughed. The man who'd taken my place at Lisa's side, who Emma now called Dad behind my back, wanted to sit across from me like equals. But curiosity and desperation dragged me into my coat. We met at a small cafe on the edge of town. Mark was already there, hands folded, posture stiff. He didn't look like the enemy I had built in my head. He looked tired, human, almost guilty. "John," he started, voice low, "thank you for coming." I stayed standing a moment longer than necessary, then sat across from him. "Say what you came to say." He exhaled, leaning forward. "Lisa told Emma you weren't her real father. She told her I was." His eyes flicked up to mine. "That's not true. I'm not her biological father. You are." The cafe blurred. I gripped the table until my knuckles went white. She said she had proof. I whispered. Mark shook his head. "She has nothing. She twisted the story to make me look better, to make you look disposable, and Emma believed it, because why wouldn't she? She trusts her mother." My throat burned. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because last night Emma asked me if I'd walk her down the aisle someday," Mark said, shame flickering in his eyes, "and I couldn't live with the lie any more. That night I called Anne. My sister's voice was sharp as a knife. Of course Lisa lied. She snapped. She's been doing it since the day She left. She couldn't stand the idea that Emma loved you more, so she poisoned her against you. She didn't just poison her. I said, she stole her from me. Anne's silence on the line was heavy. Finally, she said, then it's time you stop protecting Lisa. Show Emma the truth, but I hesitated. 20 years I had carried this burden: hospital records, legal papers, DNA results. I kept them locked away, convinced the past belonged in the past. But now, with Emma looking at me as if I were a stranger, I realized silence had only fed the lie. The next day I spread everything across my dining room table: photographs, custody documents, a hospital bracelet with Emma's name and mine, and at the very center, the DNA test Lisa never knew I had taken. The evidence wasn't just proof. It was my life with Emma, written in ink and memory. My hand shook as I packed it into a box. Tomorrow I would invite her to lunch. Tomorrow I would put the truth in her hands. But just as I closed the lid, my phone buzzed again. Not from Emma, not from Mark, but from Lisa. Her message read, "If you tell her anything, you'll regret it." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. For years I had stayed quiet to protect Emma from pain, but now Lisa had declared war, and I was finally ready to fight back. I invited Emma to lunch at the same little diner where I used to take her after school for pancakes. She arrived late, arms crossed, her face drawn into the same hard mask I had seen on Lisa years ago. She sat down without a hug, without even a hello. "Why am I here, John?" she asked, her tone flat, dismissive. For a moment I studied her, the way she looked like her mother when angry, but had my eyes when she was tired. My chest tightened. "Because you deserve the truth," I said quietly. I slid a small wooden box across the table. "Everything you need to know in here." She rolled her eyes. "More excuses." "Not excuses," I replied. "Proof." She opened the box and pulled out a faded hospital bracelet. Her name was etched on it in worn black ink. Next to it, the word father, John Carter. Her hand trembled as she held it. "This doesn't prove anything." "Mom said I cut her off gently. Emma, I was there the day you were born. I held you before your mother did. That bracelet never left my wrist until the nurse cut it off." Her eyes flickered with something, doubt, maybe, but she shook her head, holding on to her anger. Next she found the letters, dozens of them, neatly folded, ink faded from years in storage. I explained, "I wrote you every week when I was deployed overseas. Your mom never gave them to you. I kept copies, because I knew one day you'd need to see them." Emma opened one at random. The paper trembled in her hands as she read aloud, "Emma, I miss you every day. When I come home, we'll go get ice cream, just you and me. I love you more than life itself. Love, Dad." Her lips pressed together. Her eyes glistened. She never showed me these. Finally I handed her the envelope, sealed, untouched for nearly 20 years. "What's this?" she asked. "Proof beyond argument." I said. She tore it open. Her breath caught as her eyes scanned the result. Her lips moved, whispering the numbers she didn't want to believe. 99. 9% probability of paternity: father, John Carter. The paper slipped from her fingers, landing face up on the table between us. Her face went pale. "No, no," Mom said. "She told me." Her voice cracked. She stared at me with wide eyes, the foundation of her world collapsing in an instant. For the first time in years, Emma whispered the word I thought I'd never hear again. "Dad." Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't finished. I leaned closer, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Emma, I have loved you every day of your life. Whether I was your biological father or not, that never would have changed. But now you see the truth, and you have to decide, do you believe me, or do you keep believing the lies your mother fed you?" Her hands shook as she clutched the DNA test, the hospital bracelet, the letters. In that moment Emma had the truth spread before her like shattered glass, but picking up the pieces would cut her in ways she never expected. Emma sat frozen in the booth. The DNA results crumpled in her trembling hands. The hospital bracelet glinting faintly under the diner's weak lights. Her eyes darted from the papers to me, as though the world she had built for 20 years was dissolving right in front of her. "No," she whispered. "No, Mom said you weren't. She swore Mark was." Her voice broke. I stayed quiet, not because I didn't have words, but because the silence was louder, more honest. Tears filled her eyes, and she pressed her palm against her forehead as if she could rub the truth away. The weight of betrayal was crashing down on her, not from me, but from the one person she trusted most. When she finally spoke, her words were hoarse. Why would she lie to me like that? Why would Mom do this? I leaned forward, my voice steady, because lies give her power. Because as long as you believed her, I was the enemy and she was the hero, and you never questioned it. Emma's lip trembled. She looked smaller, suddenly, not the grown woman who had spit venom at me days ago. She looked like the little girl who used to crawl into my lap when thunder shook the windows. Her voice cracked. "She stole you from me. I swallowed hard." "No, Emma," she tried, "but you and I, we were never gone from each other. Not really. The truth just took a little longer to reach you." Emma's loyalty to her mother fractured right there in front of me. You could see it in her eyes, the disbelief, the grief, the sudden rage that comes when you realize the foundation of your life was built on lies. She shoved the DNA paper back into the box and whispered, "I don't know who to trust any more." I reached across the table, placing my hand gently on hers. "Then start with what you know in your heart. Who was there when you fell off your bike? Who was there clapping the loudest at your graduation? Who never missed a birthday, never stopped calling you his little girl?" Her shoulders shook. A single sob escaped her lips before she clamped her mouth shut. She didn't want me to see her break. Finally, she wiped her eyes and said in a voice I hadn't heard since she was a child, "I have to ask her. I have to hear it from her mouth. I need to see if she can lie to my face again." And just like that, she stood clutching the box, her eyes wild with hurt and determination. She left me sitting in the booth, the echo of her footsteps fading, while my coffee grew cold. Emma was going to confront her mother, and I knew when she did, the truth would not just break Lisa's lies. It might destroy everything. Emma didn't call me for 2 days, 2 long, brutal days where every buzz of my phone made my chest tighten. I didn't sleep, didn't eat much, didn't dare imagine how the conversation with Lisa would unfold. On the third night the silence broke. My phone lit up at 11:42 p.m. It was Emma. Her voice was shaking. "Dad, can I come over?" When she arrived, her face was pale, her eyes red. She looked like someone who had walked through a storm with no umbrella. She set the wooden box on my table again, but this time it wasn't a gift to open, it was a weapon she had carried into battle. She told me everything. She went straight to her mother's house. She put the DNA test, the letters, the bracelet down in front of Lisa and asked one question. "Did you lie to me?" Lisa froze, then laughed it off, saying the test must be fake, that I had forged it to win Emma back. But Emma pressed harder. "Look me in the eyes, Mom. Is John my father?" And Lisa, who had spent years weaving her stories into armor, cracked. Her voice rose, her excuses spiraled. "Fine, yes, he's your father, but he was never enough. He was weak, boring, predictable. You deserved better, Emma. I gave you better." Emma's heart shattered with every word, because the truth wasn't just that her mother had lied. The truth was that the lie came from a place of pride, spite, and cruelty. Emma told me, she screamed. She asked her mother why. Why take away the one person who had never abandoned her? Lisa's answer was as hollow as it was cruel, "Because I could." And in that moment Emma said, something inside her snapped. The pedestal she had placed her mother on crumbled to dust. She picked up the box, the proof, and walked out. Now, across from me at my own kitchen table, she whispered, "I don't know who my mother is anymore. I reached across, covering her shaking hands with mine. You know who I am. That's all that matters. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. I believed her for so long. I hated you for nothing. And you just... You stayed silent. I stayed silent because I thought I was protecting you. I said softly, but silence only gave her room to twist the knife. Emma leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, like she hadn't done in years. Dad, I'm so sorry. I held her, my throat tight. It wasn't your fault. Emma, you were a child caught in the middle of someone else's war. You believed the person you thought you could trust. That doesn't make you guilty. Her grip on my arm tightened. I can't forgive her for this. Not now. Maybe not ever. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, but inside, for the first time in weeks, the house didn't feel empty. Emma had chosen. The lie had finally collapsed. The days after Emma's confrontation with her mother felt like stepping out of a storm. The air was still heavy, but there was clarity. The clouds had broken, and the truth now stood tall where lies once ruled. Emma began coming around more often. At first, it was small things, a short visit after work, a text that simply read, "Dinner tonight." But those small gestures carried the weight of years. One evening she showed up with a lasagna she had cooked herself. She set it on my table, awkward, almost shy. I thought, "Maybe we could eat together like we used to," she said. We sat across from each other, the old rhythm slowly returning. She asked about my day, about my job, about things she hadn't cared to know in years, and when I told her, she listened, really listened. For me, it wasn't just a meal, it was justice, not the kind written in courtrooms or signed on legal papers, but the quiet kind, the kind where love that was stolen is finally returned. Meanwhile, Lisa's carefully built image began to crack. Words spread quickly. Families talk, neighbors whisper, and betrayal doesn't stay hidden for long. People at church stopped sitting near her. Old friends crossed the street to avoid her. Even Mark, her husband, grew distant, weary of the poison she had spilled. At family gatherings, no one asked Lisa about Emma anymore. Instead, they asked Emma about me. They looked at me with something new in their eyes, respect, sympathy, a recognition that for all Lisa's lies, the truth had endured. Lisa became the one left out, the one people whispered about in grocery store aisles, the one whose daughter no longer trusted her. Karma hadn't come with fire and thunder. It came quietly, relentlessly, until Lisa stood alone in the very shadow she had tried to cast over me. One Sunday, Emma arrived with a frame in her hands. Inside was a photograph of me holding her as a baby, my smile wide, her tiny fist gripping my finger. "I want this in my house," she said, "so no one can ever make me forget again who my father is." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Are you sure?" She smiled through her tears. "I've never been more sure." And just like that, the years of silence, the venom, the doubts, they began to fade, not vanish but soften, replaced with something stronger, something real. Lisa thought she could erase me with lies. She thought she could rewrite truth, but justice doesn't always wear a robe or bang a gavel. Sometimes justice is simply a daughter returning to the arms of the father she almost lost. Emma had chosen the truth. She had chosen me, and Lisa, she became the ghost in the story, the cautionary tale whispered in low voices. Remember what she did to her own daughter. Justice had been served, but as Emma hugged me that night, one thought lingered in my mind. The scars of betrayal never fully fade. They become a reminder not of weakness, but of the strength it takes to survive them. They say time heals all wounds. I don't believe that anymore. Time doesn't erase pain, it only teaches you how to carry it differently. My daughter and I are closer now than we've been in years. She visits, she calls me Dad again, and sometimes when she laughs, it feels like the sound of a door unlocking after being shut for far too long. But even as we rebuild, the shadow of betrayal lingers in the background, a reminder of how fragile trust really is. As for Lisa, her world has grown smaller. Friends turned cold, family pulled away, and her own daughter stopped listening to her voice. The lie she built to destroy me became the very wall that trapped her inside her own loneliness. That's what betrayal does. It devours the betrayer just as surely as it wounds the betrayed. I've learned something in all of this. Justice doesn't always roar like thunder. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes justice is as simple as the truth finally standing on its own. After years of being buried, so when Emma once said, "You're not my real father," I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I showed her the truth, and in the end that truth shattered the lie, rebuilt our bond, and left the betrayer to choke on her own silence, because every betrayal carries a price. Sooner or later, justice always collects it.